With these words, glorious Hector rushed out through the gate with his brother Paris, both eager to do battle. As a god answers exhausted sailors' prayers and sends them a breeze when their limbs are weak from the effort of driving their polished pine oars through the sea, so the two of them reappeared like an answer to the Trojans' prayers. Then Paris killed Menestheus, who lived at Arne, and was the son of Lord Areithus the Messiman, and ox-eyed lady Philomedusa. Hector with his sharp spear stabbed Aeneas in the neck under the bronze rim of his helmet and brought him down. Meanwhile, the Lycian leader, Glaucus, throwing a spear across the lines of battle, struck Iphinoas on the shoulder just as he was leaping up behind his fast mares. He fell from his chariot to the ground and crumpled up. When the goddess grey-eyed Athene saw Greeks being slaughtered in the heat of battle, she came swooping down from the heights of Olympus to sacred Ilium. But Apollo, who desired a Trojan victory, saw her from the citadel Pergamus in Ilium and started out to intercept her. The two met by the oak tree, and Lord Apollo, son of Zeus, spoke first. "Daughter of great Zeus, why have you so eagerly come down from Olympus? With what high purpose in mind? Since the destruction of the Trojans does not move you at all, do you want to switch victory to the Greeks? But if you care to listen to me, I have a better plan. Let us end the fighting and the bloodshed for the moment. They can fight again another day and go on till they reach their goal in Ilium, since you goddesses have set your hearts on razing this town to the ground." The goddess grey-eyed Athene replied, "So be it, archer-god. That is what I too had in mind when I came from Olympus to visit the battlefield. But how do you propose to stop the men from fighting?" Lord Apollo, son of Zeus, replied, "We could rouse the fighting spirit in horse-taming Hector and make him challenge one of the Greeks to take him on face-to-face in mortal combat. The Greeks would be put on the spot and would send out someone to fight a duel with godlike Hector." So he spoke, and the goddess grey-eyed Athene complied. Priam's son Helenus was able to divine what these gods had agreed, and went straight up to his brother Hector and addressed him. "Hector, son of Priam, equal in wisdom to Zeus, you should allow yourself to be guided by your brother. Make the Trojans and Greeks sit down and then challenge the best of the Greeks to take you on face to face in mortal combat. Your time has not yet come to die and meet your destiny. I have this from the immortal gods themselves." So he spoke, and Hector was delighted at what he heard. He stepped out into no man's land and, grasping his spear by the middle, pushed the Trojan ranks back. They all sat down, and Agamemnon made the Greeks do the same. Athene and Apollo, lord of the silver bow, also sat down, in the form of vultures, on a tall oak tree sacred to Zeus who drives the storm cloud. They enjoyed the sight of all these warriors sitting there, rank upon rank, rippling with shields, helmets, and spears, like ripples spreading over the sea when the west wind first springs up and the surface darkens under it. So the ranks of Greeks and Trojans sat down on the plain. Hector addressed the two armies. "Hi, Mango. Trojans and Greek men at arms, hear a proposal I am moved to make. High-throned Zeus has not brought our oaths to fulfillment. It's clear he has trouble in store for both sides till the day when you bring down the Trojan city." Get your head out. Thank you. "Till the day when you bring down the Trojan city with its fine towers, or succumb to us yourselves beside your seafaring ships." Mango, get down. Thank you. "Now you have in your army the finest men in all Greece. Let the man who is willing to take me on step forward in front of everyone as your champion against godlike Hector." He really called himself that? "And here are the conditions I lay down, with Zeus for witness. If your man kills me with his long-pointed spear, he can strip me of my arms and take them back to your hollow ships, but he must let them bring my body home, so that the Trojans and their wives can cremate it in the proper manner. If I kill your man, and Apollo gives me the glory, I shall strip off his armour and bring it to sacred Ilium, where I shall hang it in Apollo's shrine, but I shall send his body back to your well-benched ships, so the long-haired Greeks can bury him properly and build a grave mound over him by the broad Hellespont. Then, one day, some future traveller sailing by in his many-oared ships across the wine-dark sea will say, "This is the monument of some great warrior of an earlier day who was killed in action by glorious Hector." That is what he will say, and my fame will never die. So he spoke, and was received in complete silence by them all. They were ashamed to refuse his challenge, but afraid to accept it. Eventually, Menelaus rose to his feet, saddened at heart, reproached them bitterly. "What does this mean, you big mouths, you women? I cannot call you men. Not a single Greek willing to meet Hector? This is the last straw, our final humiliation. Very well then, sit there and rot, the whole lot of you, gutless no-hopers to a man. I will arm and fight him myself. The gods above will decide who wins." With these words he put on his splendid armour, and that, Menelaus, would have been the end of you, since Hector was by far the better man, if the Greek leaders had not leapt up and held you back. If the son of Atreus himself, wide-ruling Agamemnon, had not seized you by the right hand and spoken. "You are mad, Olympian-bred Menelaus. There is no call for such foolishness. Withdraw, however distressing it may be for you. Don't fight a better man just to make a contest of it. Others quail before Hector. Even Achilles feared to meet him in battle, where men win glory, and Achilles is a far better man than you. So go back now and sit among your men, and the Greeks will find someone else to fight for them against this man. Hector may be fearless and never able to get enough fighting, but I still think even he will be glad to rest his weary limbs if he escapes with his life from the heat of this deadly encounter. Mine go!" Oh, she's on one today. With this sound advice, Agamemnon changed his brother's mind, and he was persuaded to step down, and joyfully his attendants took the armour from his shoulders. Then Nestor rose to his feet and addressed the Greeks. "This is a disgrace, enough to make Greece weep. How Peleus, the old horseman, would grieve. Peleus, that brave adviser and orator of the Myrmidons, who took such delight, when I stayed with him once, in finding out from me the parentage and pedigree of every Greek. If it came to his ears that those same men were now all cowering before Hector, he would lift up his hands to the gods and beg them to let his spirit leave his body and descend into Hades' halls. Ah, Father Zeus, Athene and Apollo, if only I could be as young as I was when the men of Pylos gathered to fight the spearmen from Arcadia at the swift river Celadon, below the walls of Phthia, by the streams of Iardanus. We were challenged by their best man, Euthalion. He was like a god and carried on his shoulders the armour of Lord Areithous. The great Areithous, who was surnamed the Mace Man by his compatriots and their girdled wives, because he never fought with a bow or spear, but used an iron mace to smash his way through the enemy ranks. Lycurgus killed Areithous not by superior strength but by cunning. He caught him in a narrow pass where his iron mace could not save him. Before the maceman could bring it into play, Lycurgus pierced him through the middle with his spear and brought him crashing to the ground on his back. Then he stripped Arethuus of the armour bronze-clad Ares had given him, and afterwards wore it himself when he went into battle. Later, when Lycurgus had grown old in his palace, he let his attendant, Ereuthalion, wear it, and so it came about that Ereuthalion challenged our champions in Areuthuus's armour, and no one dared take up the challenge. They were all thoroughly terrified. But I was bold enough to take him on, and rash enough. But then I was the youngest of them all, so I fought him, and Athene gave me the glory. He was the tallest and strongest man I have ever killed. He lay there, a giant of a man, sprawling this way and that. Ah, if only I were still as young and with all my powers intact, then Hector, of the flashing helmet, would soon have his fight. As it is, I see before me the best men in all Greece, and not one has the will to stand up to Hector. So the old man reproached them, and 9 men in all then sprang up. Agamemnon, lord of men, was the first to rise. He was followed by mighty Diomedes, son of Tydeus, and these by the 2 Ajaxes, clothed in martial valour, and these again by Idomeneus and Idomeneus' attendant Meriones, equal of the murderous war god Ares, and these by Eurypylus, Euaemon's noble son. Thoas, son of Andraemon, got up too, and so did godlike Odysseus. When all these had volunteered to fight godlike Hector, Nestor, the Gerenian charioteer, addressed them. Draw lots to decide who is to be chosen. The winner will not only benefit the Greeks, but will also reap a rich reward himself, if he escapes with his life from the heat of this deadly encounter. So he spoke, and each of them marked his own lot and put it into the helmet of Agamemnon, son of Atreus, while the troops raised their hands to the gods and prayed. They looked up to the broad skies and said as one man, Father Zeus, let it be Ajax or Diomedes or Agamemnon himself, lord of golden Mycenae. So they spoke, and Nestor the Gerenian charioteer shook the helmet, and out leapt the lot they had hoped for, that of Ajax. A herald carried it round the circle from left to right, showing it to each of the Greek leaders, and each in turn disowned it when he failed to recognize his mark. At last, as he took the lot round the group, he came to the man who had marked it and put it in the helmet, glorious Ajax himself. Ajax reached out. The herald came up and put the lot in his hand. Ajax recognized his mark and was thrilled. He threw it on the ground at his feet and said, Friends, the lot is mine, and I am delighted because I shall defeat godlike Hector. But while I am arming for the fight, pray to Lord Zeus, son of Cronus, and pray in silence, so that the Trojans cannot overhear you. Or pray out loud. We are afraid of nobody whatever. No one is going to have his way with me and make me run, either by brute force or because I lack the skill. After all, I should be surprised to find I was born and bred a complete novice on Salamis. And they then prayed to Lord Zeus, son of Cronus. They looked up to the broad skies and said as one man, Father Zeus, you that rule from Mount Ida, greatest and most glorious, answer Ajax's prayer and grant him a brilliant victory. But if you hold Hector dear too, and wish him well, let neither man be beaten, and the fight be drawn. So they spoke, and Ajax armed himself in his dazzling bronze. When all his armour was on, he set out like awe-inspiring Ares, god of war, going to join battle among men brought together to fight by Zeus, their hearts set on soul-destroying combat. So awe-inspiring Ajax, a tower of strength for the Greeks, rose and went into battle, smiling a grim smile, taking great strides as he went, brandishing his long-shadowed spear. The Greeks, when they saw him, were overjoyed. but there was not a Trojan whose knees did not tremble. Even Hector's heart beat faster, but it was too late now for him to turn tail and slink back amongst his men, since it was his will to fight that had made him throw down the challenge. And now Ajax drew near, carrying a shield like a tower made of bronze and 7 layers of oxhide. Tychius, the master leatherworker, who lived at Hyle, had made his glittering shield for him with the hides of 7 well-fattened bulls, which he overlaid with an 8th layer of bronze. Holding the shield in front of him, Ajax, son of Telamon, went right up to Hector and defied him. "Hector, you're now going to discover, in single combat, what sort of champions the Greeks have at their disposal, even when they can't count on Achilles, lion-hearted breaker of men. At the moment he is lying by his seafaring beaked ship, nursing his implacable anger against Agamemnon, son of Atreus, shepherd of the people. But for all that, we have men who can stand up to you, and plenty of them. So take the first throw and start the duel." Great Hector of the flashing helmet said, "Olympian-born Ajax, son of Telamon, leader of men, don't try to scare me like a feeble child or a woman who knows nothing about warfare. I know all about fighting and killing. I know how to handle my toughened oxhide shield and swing it to right or left. The real skill of work with a shield. I know how to charge in among the confusion of the chariots, and in a standing fight I know all the steps of the war god's deadly dance. But enough. Seeing the man you are, I have no desire to steal a shot at you when you aren't looking, but to throw openly if I can hit you." He spoke, balanced his long-shadowed spear and hurled it. It struck the formidable 7-fold shield of Ajax on its metal sheath, the 8th and outermost layer. The untiring bronze tore through 6 layers, but was held up by the 7th hide. Then Olympian-born Ajax, in turn, hurled his long-shadowed spear. It hit Hector's round shield. The heavy weapon pierced the glittering shield, forced its way through the ornate body armour, and ripped right on through the side of Hector's tunic. But Hector had swerved and so avoided dark death. And now the pair, when each had pulled the long spear out of his shield, fell on each other like flesh-eating lions or wild boars whose strength is not to be despised. Hector thrust at the centre of Ajax's shield with his spear, but it did not break through, and the tip was bent back. Then Ajax leapt in and stabbed at Hector's shield. The spear passed clean through and stopped Hector in his tracks. It grazed his neck, and the dark blood spurted out. Yet even so, Hector of the flashing helmet did not give up the fight. He drew back, and with his great hand picked up a large and jagged piece of black rock that was lying on the ground, held it at Ajax's formidable 7-fold shield, and struck it in the middle of the boss, making the bronze ring out. But Ajax then picked up an even bigger rock, which he swung and hurled at Hector, putting his full weight into it. This millstone of a boulder crumpled his shield and swept him off his feet. There Hector lay, jammed in the shield, stretched on his back. But Apollo quickly had him up on his feet again. "You're not supposed to be interfering." And now they would have closed and hacked at one another with their swords if heralds, ambassadors of Zeus and men, had not intervened. Talthybius on the Greek side, and Idaeus on the Trojan, both sensible men. They raised their sceptres between the combatants, and Idaeus, a herald rich in wisdom, spoke his mind. "Dear sons, give up now and break off the fight. Cloud-gatherer Zeus holds you both dear, and you are both fine spearmen. We all of us know that. Also, it is nearly dark. it is sensible to take that into account." Ajax, son of Telamon, replied and said, "Idias, tell Hector to call it off. It was his will to fight that made him throw down the challenge to all our best men. Let him make the first move. I will do as he does." Great Hector of the flashing helmet said, "Ajax, the god has given you size, strength, and ability, and you are the best spearman on your side. Let us bring today's duel to an end. We can fight some other time, till the powers above decide between us, and one of us wins. Also, it is nearly dark. It is sensible to take that into account. Then you will bring joy to the Greeks, back at the ships, your friends and relatives above all, while I too shall get a warm welcome in Lord Priam's town from the Trojans and the Trojan ladies in their trailing gowns, who will enter the sacred assembly to offer up prayers in my name. But first, let us both exchange prestigious gifts, so that Trojans and Greeks alike can say, 'These two fought each other in soul-destroying combat, but were reconciled and parted friends.' This is war, you dumbass." With these words he gave Ajax his silver-riveted sword, which he handed over with its scabbard and sword belt. And at the same time Ajax gave Hector his brilliant purple belt. No sword for you. So the two parted. Ajax went back into the Greek lines, while Hector rejoined the Trojan forces. His men were delighted to see him return to them safe and sound from the fury of Ajax's invincible assault. They escorted him back to the town, hardly able to believe he was alive. Meanwhile, on the other side, the Greek men-at-arms conducted Ajax, elated by his victory, to godlike Agamemnon. When they reached his huts, Agamemnon, lord of men, offered a 5-year-old bull on their behalf to almighty Zeus, son of Cronus. They skinned and prepared it by cutting up the carcass. They deftly carved it into small pieces, pierced these with skewers, roasted them carefully, and drew them all off. When their work was done and the meal prepared, they feasted, and no one went without a fair share. Do they have any vegetables at all? Because it never sounds like they do. Though the warrior son of Atreus, wide-ruling Agamemnon honoured Ajax with the whole length of the back. Their hunger and thirst satisfied, a proposal was put to them by the old man Nestor, whose wisdom had often proved itself in the past. He had their interests at heart as he rose and addressed them. "Agamemnon and you other Greek chieftains, the Greek army has suffered heavy losses. The cruel war god has darkened the banks of Scamander with the blood of our dead, whose souls have gone down to Hades. So at dawn you should announce a truce. Then let us all get to work together. Bring the dead in here with oxen and mules and burn them not far from the ships, so that each of us can take the bones back home to their children when we return to the land of our fathers. Let us then make them one communal grave mound over the pyre on the plain. Then we should immediately construct high-towered walls against it to protect the ships and ourselves, with well-fitted gates that leave room for chariots to drive through, and a little way outside the wall we should dig a deep ditch parallel with the walls all around the camp, to keep out enemy chariots and infantry, in case the proud Trojans start putting the pressure on us some day." So he spoke, and they all approved. Meanwhile, at the doors of Priam's palace on the town heights of Ilium, the Trojans held a frightened and confused assembly. Sensible Antenor spoke first. "Trojans, Dardanians, and allies, hear a proposal which I feel compelled to make. Enough is enough. Let us give Helen back to Agamemnon and Menelaus, along with all the property that came with her." I mean, if you'd have done this, then maybe shit wouldn't have happened, but okay. "By fighting on as we are doing, we have cheated on the oaths. No good that I can see will ever come of that, unless we act as I suggest. So Antenor spoke and sat down. Godlike Paris, husband of lovely-haired Helen, stood up, and in reply spoke winged words. Antenor, that was an unusually ill-disposed speech of yours. You know, you could have thought of something better. But if you really do mean what you say, then the gods themselves must have scrambled your brains. I shall now tell you, horse-taming Trojans, my views, and declare outright that I will not give up my wife. I mean, she was Menelaus's wife first, wasn't she? You stole her. On the other hand, I am willing to return all the goods I brought home with me from Greece and to add something of my own. So Paris spoke and sat down. Dardanian Priam, wise as the gods, stood up, and he had their interests at heart as he rose and addressed them. Trojans, Dardanians and allies, listen to what I feel compelled to say. For the moment, take your supper in town as usual. Remember to mount guard and keep alert, every man of you. At dawn, let Idaeus go to the hollow ships and convey to Agamemnon and Menelaus the offer we have heard from Paris, who started the quarrel. And Idaeus can make a further sensible suggestion. He can ask the Greeks whether they are willing to refrain from hostilities till we have burnt our dead. We can fight some other time, till the powers above decide between us and one of us wins. So he spoke, and the Trojans heard and agreed. They took their supper at their posts, and at dawn Idaeus went to the hollow ships where he found the Greeks, attendants of Ares, in conference by the stern of Agamemnon's ship. The herald stood among them and spoke out clearly. Agamemnon and you other leaders of the Greeks, Priam and the other noble Trojans have instructed me to deliver an offer from the man who started our quarrel, Paris, if it meets with your approval. All the property Paris brought away with him to Troy in his hollow ships, and would to God he had perished first, he is willing to return, with additions of his own, but he says he will not give up glorious Menelaus's wife, though I can assure you the Trojans have urged him to do so. Furthermore, they instructed me to ask whether you are willing to refrain from hostilities while we burn the dead. We can fight some other time, till the powers above decide between us, and one of us wins. So he spoke, and was received in complete silence by them all. Eventually Diomedes, master of the battle cry, spoke up. At this stage let no one accept Paris's offer of possessions, or Helen either. Any fool can see the Trojans' doom is sealed. The Greeks to a man roared their approval, delighted at the words of horse-taming Diomedes. Lord Agamemnon then addressed Idaeus. Idaeus, you have heard for yourself the Greek view. That is their answer, and I am pleased to agree. The cremation of the bodies is another matter. To that I raise no objection. When men are dead and gone, one cannot grudge their bodies' swift propitiation by fire. A truce, then, and let loud thundering Zeus, husband of Hera, witness it. With these words he sealed the oath by lifting up his sceptre to all the gods. Idaeus then withdrew, and made his way back once again to sacred Ilion, where the Trojans and Dardanians had gathered and were all seated in assembly, awaiting the herald's return. When Idaeus reached them, he stood in the middle and reported his news. Then they prepared themselves at once for their double task, some to bring in the dead and others to fetch wood. Parties of Greeks from their well-benched ships hurried off on the same duties. The sun, climbing into the sky from the deep and peaceful stream of ocean, was already lighting up the fields with his first beams when the Trojan and Greek parties met. Even so, they found it difficult to recognize the individual dead bodies until they had washed away the congealed blood with water. Then, as they lifted them onto the wagons, the hot tears flowed. As for the Trojans, great Priam had forbidden his men to cry aloud, so with heavy hearts they piled up their dead on the pyre in silence. and when they had cremated them, returned to sacred Ilium. So too, on their side, the Greek men-at-arms, with heavy hearts, piled up their dead on the pyre, and, when they had cremated them, returned to their hollow ships. Before dawn on the next day, when the night had a hint of daylight, a working party of Greek troops gathered by the pyre. Over the pyre they made one communal grave mound in the plain, and constructed high-towered walls against it to protect the ships and themselves, with well-fitted gates which left room for chariots to drive through. And a little way outside the wall, they dug a long ditch parallel with the walls, deep and broad, and planted a row of stakes along it. So the long-haired Greeks worked away. But the gods, seated with Zeus, lord of the lightning flash, were watching the great work of the bronze-armoured Greeks in some amazement. Poseidon, the earth shaker, began and spoke his mind. "Father Zeus, is there no mortal left in the whole wide world who will inform us gods of his plans? Can't you see that the Greeks have thrown a wall round their ships and dug a ditch along it, without offering impressive sacrifices to the gods? Its fame will spread as far as the dawn extends, and the wall that I and Phoebus Apollo built with such labour for the warrior Laomedon will be forgotten." Angrily, Zeus, who marshals the clouds, replied, "Powerful earth-shaker, what are you talking about? Leave it to other gods less determined and tenacious than yourself to be alarmed at this development, and rest assured, it is your fame that will spread as far as the dawn extends. Besides, you can go to work once the Greeks have sailed back to their land of their fathers. Break down the wall, scatter the fragments in the sea, cover the long beach once more with sand, and so obliterate this great wall." While the gods were talking together in this way, the sun set, and the Greeks finished their task. They slaughtered some oxen in their huts and took their supper. A number of ships had put in from Lemnos with cargoes of wine. They came from Euneus, the son Hypsipyle had borne to Jason, shepherd of the people, and he had included 1,000 measures of sweet wine as a special gift for Agamemnon and Menelaus. The long-haired Greeks now supplied themselves with wine from these ships, some in exchange for bronze, some for gleaming iron, others for hides or live cattle, others again for war captives. It was a sumptuous meal they prepared. All night long the Greeks feasted themselves, while in the town the Trojans and their allies did the same. But all night long Zeus, wise in counsel, brewing evil for them in his heart, kept thundering ominously. They turned pale with fear and poured wine on the ground from their cups. Not a man dared to drink before he had made a libation to the almighty son of Cronus. Then they lay down and took the gift of sleep.